I learned how to basically use all these experiences that have shaped me, become a victim in a sense, where I do have a higher sense of I know if I should trust this person or not just by having one conversation with them. I feel like that's my power.
Hello, my name is Javier Perez, and welcome to Off the Record. This is an exploration of humans through their intimate stories, discovering the ingredients that make them who they are, and the tools they are using moving forward. In this, our first episode, we sit down with the beautiful, enigmatic, and enchanting Malaysian recording artist Lunadira. We dive into her work, her music, her intuition, and mystery, and even get into a bit of shadow.
We're diving in, but thanks, Nadira for just being here, and thanks to Pete and Lisa for allowing us to just kind of walk around their beautiful kind of space and compound, and we're just getting to know each other. And the reason that I brought you here is just learning a little bit about you. As we discussed, you had mentioned about a farm and just nature, and I thought that this would be a great kind of setting for us to just have open conversations, right? So I'm excited to just kind of learn a little bit about your magnetism, your mystery. I feel that over the short conversations we've had, I'm really curious, and but also just kind of pleasantly just watching this person be, right? So I'm really happy that you've allowed for this time, right?
Thanks for having me. Like I struggle, and it's so ironic that I'm doing what I'm doing right now in my life, but I do struggle with being perceived, and I feel like it comes a lot with the fact that I have trust issues. So taking me to this space and thankfully having conversations with you, I feel like I am able to say what I want with a very unconventional interview format. It's what I prefer, and I don't do this often, so thank you for having me.
Yeah. Where does that come from? And I mean, you're talking about having kind of this guarded self or these trust issues. Where is that coming from? And I know that we'll talk about a lot of things today, and we'll talk about you've got new music coming out, and it's out, and how does that kind of tie back to your art form? But I guess let's start there at the root of kind of trust, insecurities, or even just ego, right? We've touched a lot about ego when we've spoken before, so yeah, maybe you can share a little bit about that.
I mean, if you want to go into the lore of it, I feel like a lot of my trust issues stem from the fact that I was never really acclimated into, at a very young age, I feel like I was diving straight into very questionable relationships with people, only because I was never really taught how to navigate through the dynamics of being young and being in love and knowing your boundaries and knowing how to carry yourself. I don't blame anyone for it. I mean, of course, you learn these things through your parents or through your environment. And I feel like when I was very young, I used to travel around a lot with my family because of my dad's work. And coming back to Malaysia, not to say that it was kind of a culture shock, but it was kind of the tipping point of coming into being a woman, I guess, a young woman. And the environment that I was in was not facilitating that well. So because of that, I had a lot of questionable relationships with boys. A lot of them were mentally abusive. And I feel like growing up with that, I had to learn a lot about dynamics of people-to-people relationships. And I was confused with a lot of it. And then on top of that, I was also growing up in an environment where social media was coming into play. Being perceived was something new on a bigger scale. So I feel like with those two things combined, I started becoming scared of taking up space. And I prefer one-on-one conversations over going to parties and trying to network or socialize or to present myself a certain way, because I feel like the only way I can be myself is when I am comfortable and I feel safe. And when I don't feel that way, I can't connect. So when I can't connect, I feel like I'm not doing something right. And it's hard for me to do what I do when my compass is not set, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned, just having kind of these questionable relationships or these moments where, either you didn't have the right tools or the right environment to kind of help you navigate that. What in them did you feel, or when did you realize that, hey, you know what, I'm not actually living these relationships in the healthiest way, or what were those kind of moments that then at least gave you these realizations?
When I started getting better friends, yeah. I feel
that's a good thing. Right?
Yeah, and I feel like the pivotal moment was when I realized I was transitioning from becoming the victim to becoming what's the opposite of a victim?
Well, I guess you would be in control, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you also don't want to be the person victimizing someone.
Yeah, but I found myself in a position where I was doing.
You were in control.
I was basically doing what
you
was
were
done to me.
Oh wow, okay.
In a mental way.
Okay.
So there was a point in my life where it was just one abusive relationship after another, and then it just switched around after I realized that the way that I practiced love for myself was lacking, and it was projecting onto all the other relationships I had, whether it be romantic or platonic. Even the best friends that I had were questionable. Getting out of high school and going into uni and cultivating friendships that were harder to... So basically it was less of a, in school, like you're kind of forced to be in companionship with each other. And I realized that I did not enjoy school at all in hindsight. I felt like my high school experience was something that I would rather forget about.
Really?
But I do have one single person from that experience that is still in my life, and she was the one that taught me to heal. I learned how to basically use all these experiences that have shaped me, become a victim in a sense, where I do have a higher sense of I know if I should trust this person or not just by having one conversation with them. I feel like that's my power. And that comes with a lot of trust issues, etc., etc. But having my best friend come in to basically neutralize that and show me that love doesn't have to be just romantic. It can be romantic in a platonic way. The way that you practice love is not just through one source. It's not just through your boyfriend, which I had to learn and practice. And it was painful, but I'm here. Yeah.
Talk to me about how this has impacted your musical expression, perhaps how this has impacted even this new music that's coming out, right? With the title, being, I'll Be All Right, right? So, what is that? Is that, would you say that this is also an expression of these experiences that you've gone through, or is this part of that healing process?
It's definitely part of the healing process. I think growing up for most of my life being the quote-unquote victim of my circumstances, I feel like with this album in particular, being birthed right after the pandemic, there was a lot of time, too much time for me to just basically reflect on myself and question the way that I love myself and other people. And I feel like being able to write about love in a toxic way or whatever, it's come to a point where I can't blame it on other people anymore. I feel like I've been stuck in this pattern for so many years, and there's a reason why I haven't been growing
or able to kind of escape that cycle. Yeah.
So when I wrote this album, I didn't even know that I was going to write about how I felt about myself, because at the end of the day, yes, I went through all those experiences, but there was a part of me that still needed to heal in order for me to continue to become someone better.
Mm.
I was convinced that I was being better only because I had better friends, I had better relationships with romantic partners. But there was still a side of me that was holding on to the past because that was the only thing I knew. It was the only thing that I thought was normal. And when it turns out it's not, like the way that I react to certain things, the way that I expect certain things from my partners, it was kind of holding me back from actually becoming better. So visually, it felt like, oh, life's going great. But when the pandemic hit, I really had to face myself and just be like, are you sure?
Mm.
Because I don't remember you getting over that obstacle.
Mm.
I just see you distracting yourself with the people around you.
Mm.
So that really brought up a lot. And I did not want to write this album the way that it came out. I thought that I was just gonna stick to what I know, which was love songs. But it turns out that I needed to dig deeper. And the album's basically a reflection of my thoughts on my healing process. And I was surprised that people could actually relate to it. Because it's quite dark as a theme. The album's quite dark. Didn't think that people would want to listen to it, but they surprisingly do.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad that I am able to have this platform, to have a voice, to become a medium to these emotions in a way, for people who don't necessarily have the tools to express it.
Yeah, that's great because, I was wondering while I was, going through the album and just, thinking about you and wondering as yourself as an artist, what is actually the bridge that you're trying to get to, right? Is it one or two dimensional? It's just like, okay, listen to my music, or is there truly a purpose? That may not sound as best as possible, but like, I was wondering, wow, is there another bridge that she's trying to connect, right? And hearing you say, having people realize if they're going through, if we can call it even traumatic kind of experiences, or just unpleasant kind of experiences through relationships, and then going through that certain healing process, I think that's a really great compass or North Star to have when you're thinking about not necessarily the whole breadth of your work or what's coming next, right, for future projects, but at least to really anchor it down to like right now. This is what we're gonna attack. This is what we're gonna look at right in the eye. And you talk about like darkness. We were speaking before about shadow. It's important for us to all look at our shadows. Like try to look at it straight in the eyes without flinching, without kind of like, looking back, and really stare it down and intimidate the shadow, right? Kind of that will break the shadow and kind of get you to a moment of light, right? A moment of clarity, a moment of peace, a moment of healing. So, you saying that the album is really dark, I personally believe we have to kind of go through darkness to reach light. Yeah,
and that's exactly what I say when I talk to the audience whenever I perform these songs. Because at the end of the day, the bridge that you're talking about, I agree with what you say, but at the same time, I feel like I'm trying to cross that bridge to community as well. Because these songs are basically internal monologues that we all have. And it's not easy to just talk about it with someone. But I feel like, I hope that through this album, there is a shared, not to say interest, but there is something shared within everyone that's listening to it.
Yeah, there's some synchronicity, right?
Yeah. And it's for people like me. It's for people that want to tap into that and not want to run away from it. Or at least when they listen to it, they realize, oh shit, I've been running away from this. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just accept it and head to the light. Leave it behind.
Yeah, well,
or carry it with you.
There's a saying, and I'm probably not doing it any justice, right? But it's like kind of like the path to light is through darkness, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's great. In this new album, right, and in these kind of new songs that you're putting out, where, other than, of course, your experiences, are you drawing other inspirations from, at this moment?
That's a good question, because I used to tell people that a lot of my old songs are drawn from my friends' experiences, a collective experience of either going through situationships or getting fucked over by someone. But through this album, it's as if I was dissociating from myself and looking at myself as a character that's just too far gone to be helped. But then I see the people around me that have been trying to
help you.
Exactly. And I think it's only through them that I could actually reach that voice in the album where it's like, hey, look, like, get out of it. Experience it, go through it. But I could only talk about it and write about it after having these conversations with my friends.
That's a great point. And it's something that I personally have gone through as well. I've had a good support circle around that have said, hey, you're going through this, you're kind of feeling all of these emotions, but don't stay there. Like, don't necessarily like live there and get stuck there or get anchored there, right? So you've taken some time off, right? And it was a huge break between your last music, to the world and this, Was that by design? Was that by choice? Was that because of unforeseen or uncontrolled kind of, circumstances like COVID? Because I did read somewhere that there was a moment that you felt like, I don't even know if I want to keep doing this, right? I may just kind of clock out. So what, can you share a little bit about what that break meant to you, and, now coming back into this? And I guess I'm also asking because, we live in a time where it's all about the feed, right? It's all about, we constantly have to be kind of putting things out, feeding people to kind of spike people's interest, make sure that we are relevant, and all of these things. So, taking almost a 3-year hiatus, was it 3 years or so, or 2 years?
I think it was 2.5.
Why and how do you see it now?
I think it's as simple as, you can't really create from a place of lack. There was a lot that I needed to nurture myself with. There was a lot that I needed to feed myself with, and a lot of that was basically my shadow self. I needed to talk to her. I needed to meet her at her level and understand why she's like that. And then a lot of those conversations can't happen online. I am not able to share that with the world because at the end of the day, I was still getting to know her. She was a stranger to me, but she has been living with me my whole life. So you can expect the emotional baggage that comes with that. And I feel like you can ask my producer, Ready Rocket, like, at certain points when we were recording it, yes, I did take a 2 to 3 year hiatus, but I was always working on music. It's just that it took longer because she was not willing to have that conversation yet. She was still comfortable in her suffocating box. She didn't want to come out and talk to me. So,
well, can I kind of understand who is she, and how did what were the rituals, or what did you do to come and have a conversation if you
it was prolonged silence.
Okay.
It was that the pandemic. It was I had to go into the room with her and basically just face her every day, even though she's not talking to me. And it was up to a point where I felt my physical body just felt so tired of having to entertain her without actually getting to know her. And I feel like the rituals that I did were basically going into spirals almost every day and dissociating so much that I couldn't even recognize my physical self anymore. I couldn't look in the mirror. I couldn't take pictures of myself. Like, we're living in a content creation world, and I'm supposed to be a part of it, but I just couldn't do it because there was just a disconnection. And when I finally met her...
Was that feeling unrecognizable, or just like an unsettledness or unhappiness with that present image of self?
Yes, I couldn't recognize myself. but at the same time, I was running on fumes. I was trying to convince myself that I could do it.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And I did most of the work in silence. And with Jimmy, I'll come up to a point where we'd be in the studio and we would spend like maybe 4 hours just going through one section, and I would start crying, and I would just be like, I don't know why I'm like this. I feel like I hate music. I don't want to talk about it. And he would just sit there and just be like, just show up. Just give yourself a try. If you think it's shit, just do it. Like, there is a reason why you're here. Why are you doubting yourself so much? Why do you feel like you are starting from ground zero when you've had years of experience before and it was way easier?
Yeah.
It's because I was running around distracting myself with my environment and not really facing her. So when it was because of the pandemic, I had to face her.
Yeah.
And it was a long process. But a lot of what she had to say is on the album, and I cried because I felt like no one wants to hear this. You know, this is depressing as shit. We're talking about, you know, trying to tie your hair around your neck, and which is such a, I would never sing that.
Yeah, it's an impressive visual.
So, to be honest with you, I could only enjoy the album once I finished the last song. But the whole process was so painful.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made it without Reddy. He was the one that kept telling me, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Just shut your brain off. Just do it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's such great and sound support. I wouldn't even call it advice, because like, it is advice, but you know, just the fact that he's saying, show up, do it. Let's not look for like this perfect moment or this, you know, let's not try to find this gem. Beauty in imperfection. There's beauty in the process, and the gems will be found through just kind of that continuous honing, right? But we don't see that at times, right? We want that kind of end product. And so, you know, that's a beautiful thing that you have, you know, a partner and a producer in Reddy to be able to kind of bring that out, right? And push that. So
yeah, and I'm grateful for that, because he was also in a position where he was worrying about so many other things.
Yeah. So you were adding to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of difficult conversations in the studio, a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, putting those boundaries will pay like such great return. Like, you won't see it now or in the next like maybe even 5 or 10
years. That's the thing, like delayed gratification was such a concept to me, because I got into music at a very, I would like to say, accidental way, but the learning curve was quite steep for me to try to fill in shoes that I perceived as what an artist should be.
Yeah.
And I was very impatient. Like, I wanted to make a song and I wanted to release it the next day. So tying back to the album, it was hard for me to sit on 9 songs and to conceptualize this whole world around it. And it's still hard. I feel like I haven't really fully processed the album at this point. So
were those 9 songs distilled from like a larger...
No, that's the thing. With the timeline that it happened, like I got Colors when I wasn't even recording the album yet. I was still sitting on like maybe 2-3 songs that I just started recording after Healing. So
you definitely had already, you know, the song that you performed on Colors already kind of, you know, done and
that was only because I was going through like a music production course. It was the only song that I co-produced myself.
Okay.
And when that happened, I still didn't have an album yet. I only had demos that I was working on. And then when I got Colors, my manager was just like, okay, it's time for you to work on the album. And I'm like, fuck, like I need more time. Like I literally just came out of a hole. So working on that album kind of disrupted that healing process. Hence why I kind of retreated back into my internal monologue and had to really deal with the shadow self. So the timeline of it all was not, to me, I felt like I was never ready.
No.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about not being ready, right? Let's speak about the other Reddy in your life, right? You know, we're talking about how he was pushing, and I think that you guys have done a beautiful job, you know, together on this body of work and on this new album. So should be very proud. I foresee great things in it being really embraced, by an audience or even a new audience. You definitely have me now, and so what does that now mean moving forward for both of you, as a as a duo in the sense of producing, working together, making more music. I know not to get ahead of anything, but how do you see this moving forward?
We've had discussions between each other where he also has to work on his solo project, because I feel like he's been doing music for half of his life, more than half of his life, but he's never really showed up as a solo artist or an artist that sings on his own tracks. And the community around him feels like that's a waste.
Yeah, they're ready for something.
Yeah, no pun intended. So I feel like I am honored to be in the space to help him catalyze that for himself. And the plan is to basically show the local music industry what artists here are actually capable of, to basically become tastemakers. I mean, it's such a big thing to call yourself as, I feel, but I feel like I genuinely believe that we come from a group of tastemakers, and we're all individually doing something and getting opportunities outside of the country.
Yeah.
Which is such a shame, because I feel like people here are ready. There are so many conversations within big labels. When they do talk about me, they say that the mass is not ready for her music yet. And I think that's there. It might be true, but at the same time, there is an audience that's been waiting. When I released the album, there were a few people saying that they've been waiting for this sound for the longest time. They just didn't know that it could come from Malaysia. And a lot of our sound is still borrowed from everything else. It's just that the way that we curated it is, I would like to believe that we're adding something new to the table. And I'm proud to be a Malaysian that's able to do that, and to basically quote unquote educate the listeners about what there is in the waters. So I guess to answer your question is to keep doing that, to facilitate that space for the listeners and the artists, through collaboration, through performance, through the pieces that we're making.
I love that. I'm an artist today that has the opportunity and the ability to impact that change, right? And continue to impact that taste. So I think that's a great position to be in, and it's also a great responsibility, right? And to a certain extent, I'm excited to see what comes of it. I'm excited to see, with this new album, like I mentioned, how people respond to it, and how many more people you will captivate. And they're just kind of with that, what is it that you hope that people do kind of take away from this, and what would be an underlying message, that you would hope, if you can kind of microdose it or encapsulate it a little bit, what's hopefully a small message that you hope people take away from this?
I think I always say this, and I still believe in it. I hope that people are able to realize that there is power in vulnerability, and there are so many ways for you to navigate through that, gracefully or ungracefully, either or. It is still a valid process, and to value the essence of being human in your consumption, or at least in your way of life. I feel like, I hope that my music is as much as it might be a sense of escapism for people, I hope that it also leaves an afterthought for them to carry on with their life, with whatever that they're going through or celebrating. Yeah.
And if I can ask, actually, what personal breakthroughs have you conquered through actually finalizing this album?
I think I am in the process, or at least in the momentum of always seeing what is on the other side of my fear. But I'm excited. I'm no longer scared. I'm no longer running away. I am jumping in head first. Yeah. Which is a new thing. Like, I don't think I've ever done that with anything in my life apart from relationships with people. Because I realized that there's a whole other world around that. And I'm finally seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all of this and just and being open. I feel that with this setting and just us chatting, we could be here for a few hours.
Yeah.
But no pun intended. Also, I think you'll be all right.
Thank you. We'll be all right.
Yeah, we'll be all right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.